Me since for the last 10 minutes. We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to leave this QR code up for just a few more moments. And I would like it if you would follow that QR code or go to the link that is in the chat and go ahead and sign in for me. Just register for us so that we can send you some supplemental information and just know a little bit about who is here. Okay, so I gotta give you a little bit of a disclaimer before we get started. I was teaching a class yesterday here in my home office, and my internet went out. And so it is actually still out. I am currently dialing in on a cell phone. And I am hopefully my internet is going to be great. But if something happens and I drop, I'm not the one hosting the Zoom, so you're going to stay in here, and I promise I will be back. I even have a backup to my backup plan, so if something happens and I drop out, Wendy's here. She's going to take over. She promised to sing and dance and tell jokes for you. So I think that's what you promised, right, Wendy? So, but I will be back, I promise. I just sometimes, because of the way that I'm dialing in, it might have a little bit of an issue. I'm not really dialing in. I'm connecting to my cell phone. But gosh, how many of you remember dial-up connections? So I'm just dating myself. I should stop that. I am going to actually turn my video off today just to kind of eliminate some of the bandwidth, but I wanted to turn my video on and say hello to you all. And I will make this happen. I promise you I will be here for you. So one last call for you to check in. And if, again, the reason we have that there is so that we can send some additional resources for you. So let's get this party started. What do you say? Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about who I am, my name is Lori Norris. I am a certified professional resume writer. I have been in the business of writing resumes. God, goodness gracious. I have been in the business for 20 years now, and I've owned my own business for 20 years, and I've been teaching resume writing and job search techniques for about 23 years now. And I am a certified professional resume writer, and I continue to keep my knowledge current because things are changing, and we are going to talk about some of those changes today. We're going to talk about some of the updates to things like applicant tracking software and using AI tools. And so we are going to talk about how we continue to keep things relevant and knowledgeable. I do have the chat open, but I will probably try to catch questions as they come up. But I do promise you that I will leave time at the end where we can unmute and ask questions. And to Leslie's request, I'm going back to the QR code so we can get checked in. And Wendy, would you put the link in the chat one more time, just so we can capture everybody that's in here and make sure that everybody is able to get registered. So we got that going. So this presentation is brought to you by Career Connectors and Arizona at Work Pinal County. And it is a joint venture that they have bringing me here today to teach you a 3-hour resume class. And I would love to hear in the chat, some of you have told me where you are tuning in from today. I'd like to know where you're at in your job search. Are you actively searching? Are you just starting to think about looking? Are you in the middle of writing your resume? Give me a little bit of insight into kind of what your focus is right now. And so I want this to be an interactive session, and I hope that you've got your resume in front of you. I hope that you've either got it open on your computer or you've got it printed out and sitting in front of you, because we are going to spend the first part of the session today kind of just dispelling some myths, clearing up some misconceptions you might have about the resume, really helping to, I want you to change the way you view the resume, quite honestly. And then we're going to go into some resume best practices. We are just going to go top to bottom, from the top of section of your resume to the bottom. When we are going to give you some actionable strategies to make an impact on your resume. And so that's really what we're going to go through today. So if you've got that resume out, pull it out. Let's get you ready to make an impact on that resume. Okay. So as I said, the first thing I want to focus on is changing your mindset about the resume. Okay. I want you to think differently about the resume, about the purpose of that resume. And what I really want you to know is that the resume, although that's oftentimes the thing we think about, like, oh, I need a job. Okay, I got to start working on my resume. It is not the most important part of your job search. It really isn't. It is obviously important. And I'll tell you that I've been hearing about the death of the resume for all of the 23 years I've been talking about resume writing. And so it is leading a very long death process. So, but it is still a relevant part of the job search. It's still very important. However, I really believe it's not the most important thing. You know, the first most important thing I think when you're headed into a job search is first you have to figure out what are you looking for, right? It's kind of like starting off on a road trip and you have no idea where you're headed. Well, you'll get somewhere, but it's maybe not exactly where you wanted to go since you didn't have a plan. The resume needs a focus. And so we're going to talk about this today about how the resume has to be a very targeted, focused document. And you really can't write a resume that appeals to everyone. So you've got to know who you are writing for. And I want you to remember that the job search itself, it is a sales and marketing process, right? So you are the product in this sales pitch. Your knowledge, your skills, your experience, your education, those are the value of your product, right? And your customer is your future employer, all right? So because we've got to think about this as a marketing process, we need to know who our customer is, what's important to that customer, what are they looking for, what do they need, and then we have to know what do we have that can meet their needs, that can solve their problems. And so while resumes are not the most important part of the job search, right? LinkedIn is equally as important as the resume today. Networking is really important when you're out looking for a job. Preparing for a job interview is incredibly important. If you put all of your energy and focus into the resume and you don't think about LinkedIn, or you don't participate in networking and you don't prepare for an interview, you're not going to get far. Okay. And so that's something to really think about. And I'll tell you right now that if only great resumes got jobs, we would have a 75% unemployment rate because bad resumes do get jobs. However, that being said, a well-written, targeted, focused resume that highlights the value you can bring to an employer, that expedites your job search, okay? And I don't know about you, but job searching is not a fun time for me. And I don't know many people that really love it. And so when we can shorten the time frame of that process, I am all for doing that. So that's what we're going to look at today is how do we create a resume that stands out from the crowd, that expedites the job search process, and that gets you the results that you're looking for. Sound like a plan? So the next thing I want to talk to you about is what should be in your resume. And it's really important to understand that your resume should not contain everything you've ever done in your career. It is not a comprehensive work history. It is not a storage area where you keep everything you've ever done. A resume is a strategic marketing document, plain and simple. And as I said earlier, like a strategic marketing campaign needs to know who its customers are. It needs to know what its customers' needs are, and it needs to know how it can meet those customers' needs. And so let's talk about marketing campaigns, because the best marketing campaigns don't talk about the product itself, right? If we think about Jeep as an example, right? If you'll watch a Jeep commercial, they're not talking to you about the size of their engines or how great their tires are. They're talking to you about adventure and exploring. So they're really talking to you about like the value you as a customer would get from driving one of their cars. You can go out and explore and take on new adventures. If you think about Dove beauty products, they're not selling soaps and lotions in their commercials, they're selling self-love and acceptance. So instead of focusing on the product, they're focusing on the value you get from the product, right? Coca-Cola is not selling fizzy brown sugary drinks, they're selling friendship and fun. Have a Coke and a smile. And so I really want you to think about when you're selling yourself to an employer, what are you selling to them, right? So exactly what do you want them to come away knowing about you as a potential employee? And that's what your resume needs to focus on, is how can you add value? What benefits are they going to get from bringing you onto their team? Okay. And so just like, this shows on the screen with this very long, it's like the length of a Walgreens receipt, right? So your resume shouldn't go back more than 10 years. And that for some people is really hard. Like, but I have 30 years of experience and I want people to know that. And what I'll tell you is there are going to be cases where your 30 years of experience are going to date you. They're going to open you to age discrimination. They're going to open you to someone telling you, I'm sorry, you're overqualified. And so a resume is a generally accepted 10-year work history. I would often never recommend you go back any further than 15 years. But if you have experience prior to 15 years that you'd like to highlight on your resume, we'll talk about how to do that later. But my recommendation to you would be to highlight it without dates. My work experience goes back to the 90s, but I don't necessarily want to highlight that because number one, that work experience is outdated, that knowledge is outdated, and I also don't need to tell anybody what my age is to open myself up to that age discrimination. So just remember, it shouldn't contain everything you've ever done in your career. I want you to read through your experience and think about what's most relevant from my experience that I can pull out and highlight in my document. I'll give you an example. Long ago in my career, I worked for a retail company and I did visual presentation and marketing for them. And creating reference materials and training materials and educating people, going out and leading trainings was a very small part of my job. But when I went from being in the corporate world to teaching job search skills to students, all they wanted to know about was, have I taught people? Have I created curriculum? Have I developed reference materials? Have I led training? And so I left all of the irrelevant information off my resume and only focused on the most relevant parts of that career. And so if you're making a pivot, or maybe you've had a very diverse background, you've got to find that tie-in. What do you highlight in each of those roles in your background to show that you're bringing relevant experience and skills from those jobs, okay? But we'll dig into that more as we go through today. So really important to know that the resume is not all about you, right? So Seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, I'm writing about me, I'm writing about my experience, my accomplishments. How can the resume not be about me? But quite honestly, what the employer really wants to know is, what can you do for me? That is the important question. How are you and your skills and your experience going to add value to my team? That is the employer's mindset. So it's all about that return on investment. The employer is going to invest their time, their money, their reputation, their customers, their other employees. They're going to invest all of that in you. And what they're looking for when they're hiring is they want the most cost effective employee. I didn't say least expensive, I said most cost effective. The person who's going to bring them the most return on investment. And so you've really got to think, how can I show them that I can bring value to their team? How can I present myself as someone who will solve their problems or fulfill their needs? Because those are the two reasons that people hire. They have problems or they have needs. And if you can figure that out and you can showcase that in your resume, it makes calling you for an interview an easy decision. We want to make this easy for the employer. If we make them dig through irrelevant information, if they're not going to, they're going to move on to the next resume. If we make them try to figure out how we're going to bring value, again, they're not going to do that. You need to make it very clear to them in your resume. So it's a different way of looking at the purpose of your resume. So I want you to take the focus off of you and put it on them. In other words, I want you to focus on their needs. And you're going to talk about how you can add value to their team, how you are going to be cost effective and meet their needs. Okay, so very, very important difference. So you've got to think about your job in a resume is to showcase, why are you worth the salary, the money that they're going to pay you? What makes you worth the money you earn? And that is really important to think about, okay? And we're going to talk about how to do that as we get through today. Okay, I alluded to this earlier, but it's really important to think about it. There is no such thing as a generic effective resume. A resume that tries to appeal to everyone will quite honestly appeal to no one, okay? So if you consider yourself a jack of all trades, anybody ever called themselves that? I'm a jack of all trades. I'm adaptable, right? And this, I work with a lot of military service members, and they come out of the military. They really are jack of all trades, right? And so, but the thing is, if you go out to, let's say today, you need to drive a nail into wood. That's your job. Today, this is what I need. I need to put a nail into a piece of wood. And you go out to your tool chest and you find a hammer and you find a Swiss Army knife. They can both drive that nail into wood eventually, but the hammer is the more effective tool at doing that, right? And so it's really important that you think about that. Whose hammer are you? Whose hammer? All right. So I really want you to think about that, is like, what tool or whose tool can you be most effective for? And so that's really important to think about. One of the ways I like to explain this to you is, let's just imagine, and this really comes back to like, why is focus so important? So let's imagine that today you decide, I'm going to go fishing in the Pacific Ocean. And I say to you, well, what kind of fish do you want to catch? And you go, I don't know. I just want to go fishing. Okay, so you get on your boat and you take off, go out into the ocean. It's kind of a big place. There's a lot of different fish out there that eat different bait, that swim in different waters, that swim in different parts of the ocean. Some are on the sea floor, some swim on the surface. And if I don't know what I'm trying to catch, what bait do I put in the water? What part of the ocean do I go to? What kind of tackle do I need? Do I need a tackle that's going to catch a small fish or a big fish? And so you're going to come back from a day of fishing and you're going to be sunburned and hungry and frustrated. And you're going to throw up your hands and you're going to say, there is no fish. There are no fish in that ocean, right? Fish aren't biting today. And I'm going to tell you right now that if you're job hunting right now and you say, no one's hiring, it's just not true. Now, I am going to tell you, it is a challenging job market. It is something like we have not seen in a while. And there's a lot of instability and uncertainty out there with all the different changes that we have going on in our government. But there are still people hiring. But the way that they're hiring is different than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. So, again, if you are throwing up your hands and saying no one is hiring, I challenge you to ask yourself, have I truly thought about who I'm trying to attract? Have I truly thought about the needs of my customer? Do I have a good sense of when I send a resume, have I really clearly communicated what makes me cost effective? And I'm going to guess that the answer is, in a lot of cases, no, I haven't thought about it that way. And it's a different way of looking at this process. And I'm going to tell you right now, you are going to be better served to send out fewer applications each week, but work harder on each one that you send out. So you really don't need to be sending 50 applications where you're just hitting apply, 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 and you're sending out the same resume and cover letter to everybody. Instead, you should be applying to really no more than 5 to 10 jobs a week, but you're really going to work hard on each one. What I recommend is when you find a job, you do what's called a SWOT analysis. And I'm going to put this in the chat, what SWOT analysis stands for. I can't talk and type. I don't know what my problem is. Maybe I just can't talk and talk effectively and type. But the SWOT analysis stands for their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats. So you see a job from, the ABC company, go out and research that company a little bit. What do they do really well? Where are they struggling right now? What are their opportunities for growth or expansion? And who is threatening them? Who's their competition? And what are they doing really well? And those are things you want to dig into. Now you go look at the job posting and you say, okay, what do I think this company is looking for when they posted this role? What exactly are they looking to fill? Do they have a problem? Do they have a need? Do some research. This is where an AI tool is great to do that research and really dig into what's going on in their world. Ask a tool like ChatGPT or Perplexity. Ask it some questions. Use it as your research assistant. And really get a little bit of knowledge about that company, dig into it, a little more knowledge than you typically would before you just hit apply. And then you take your foundation of a resume that we're going to talk about creating today, a targeted, focused resume, and you further refine that resume to appeal to that employer. And you send out 5 to 10 of these a week. You will get more interviews from those 5 to 10 targeted and focused resumes than you ever would have received from having, sending out 100 a week and just hitting apply without changing anything on your resume. I promise you. And I don't know about you, but I don't really love rejection. I don't love getting those no's or getting nothing, getting the ghosted, right? Which it's really not ghosting. It's just that they're overwhelmed with applicants. And so I would rather get fewer of those, and I would rather up my chances of success. And I promise you, if you take this different approach to the job search, you will get more of a percentage of success. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It's a little different way of thinking about it. Um, the other thing I really want you to remember is that hiring you is not the employer's top priority. And I know that sometimes can be hard to hear, but they're busy, right? They're shorthanded. They need to bring you on. And I know that if they were to add you to their team, you would add value. But it's really important that we never put all our eggs in one basket. We never put our focus all on one position, one company, and that we diversify our search and we use things like applying online, networking, going to career fairs. There's a lot of different things you can be doing, and just sitting at your computer 8 hours a day, hitting apply online to, things that are posted on a job board, you'll get frustrated very quickly. And so diversify your search. Remember that they are running a business. And so the thing I really want to say here also is just don't take it personal, which is easy to say, right? But it really isn't necessarily you that's getting the no, it's the candidate pool that you're among. And there are going to be times where you're in a candidate pool where you're the biggest fish in that pond, and there are going to be times where you're not. And it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with the employer knowing what they're looking for, who will fit best into the team, the kinds of skills that they need. And it's just about who you're in that candidate, that the list of applicants among. And so I want you to not take it personal. I want you to be patient if you don't hear back from them quickly, right? Some people respond in an hour. Some people respond in 2 weeks. So be patient, be persistent, but don't be a pest. Remember, it's okay to follow up. Maybe once every other week, check in with them, but twice a day is definitely overkill. And that's not how we want to get their attention, is by being a pest to them, right? But most importantly here, don't take it personal. Okay, let's talk about this. This is an important one that I want to cover before we kind of dig into our best practices, okay? So tell me in the chat if you have seen it posted online, like, oh, I will help you beat the ATS robot. I'll give you a resume that'll beat the ATS. And you've probably heard this out there, like, oh, the ATS, the robots are the ones that are shooting down your resumes, right? And so let's talk about first what an ATS is, and how it operates, and how to make sure that we are creating resumes that are compatible with that. Okay. So it's really important that we talk about this. So first of all, what is an ATS? An ATS stands for Applicant Tracking Software. And applicant tracking software is used by just about every organization now. And they use it to track the people that apply to their jobs, hence why it's called applicant tracking software. And so when someone applies to their job, they use this ATS to parse information from the resume and that you submit, and fill in their tracking database from your resume. And that is how they know who's applied, and they keep records of those candidates, because you might apply for a job today and you're not the best candidate, but that same job might open up in 3 weeks again, and they don't want to post it and go through the process again, but they have your application in their system so they can track you and who has applied. Okay. And so that's really what an ATS is meant to do, is to help companies keep better track of the people that apply to their jobs. So they have kind of a pool of applicants to choose from, not just for today's opening, but for future openings. And so the ATS, there are about 4,000 different ATSs out there. So there's 4,000 different kinds of software. Some of them are older and more antiquated, and some of them are newer and have the ability to do lots of different things. And so we don't know who uses what system, and so it's very challenging to say all ATSs do this. And so what I want to talk to you about today is the older systems and how those operate, because again, we're going to speak to the older ATSs and how those operate, and it will also apply to the newer systems because they've only gotten better. Okay, and so what does an ATS do? Well, an ATS parses that information from your resume and auto-populates their tracking database. And so we need to create a resume that is compatible with that ATS, and that the ATS can effectively find the information that it needs and put it in the right place in their database. So I'm going to talk to you about how to create a compatible resume to an ATS. And then let's talk about the screening process. So once that ATS has captured the information from your resume and transferred it over to their database, what it does is it scans through your document and it looks for keywords, it looks for certain parameters, and it makes a decision as to the quality of candidate you are in terms of meeting the needs of the company, the hiring manager, and the job posting that you've applied to. Now, tell me in the chat, have you ever applied to a job, I don't know, say late at night, 10 o'clock, before you go to bed, you decide to submit an application. And before you even brush your teeth, you've already received a message that says, thank you for applying. We've decided to go another direction. Has that ever happened to you? And you know there's not a recruiter reading resumes at 10 o'clock at night. We hope not, right? But it happens. And so here's the thing. This is what causes people to say, the robot is screening me out, right? And so, yeah, I'm getting a lot of yeses. Sunday always happens, right? So late at night, weekends, we hope the recruiters aren't working. And so here's what's happening. Always when an ATS sends you an auto reject notice, a human being behind that ATS has set up what they call knockout questions. And basically they say, if the candidate doesn't have these things on their resume, send them a rejection notice. Maybe it's, do you have a certain like certification or licensure? Maybe it is a certain kind of education, a background or a degree program that you've completed. It could be a number of years of experience. So maybe it didn't see that, they want 5 years of customer service experience and you only have 4 years. And so those are what we call knockout questions. And that's why you get those auto reject. So while yes, the system did send that auto reject, behind the scenes, a human set that up and said, here are our parameters that we're looking for. And so for some reason, you didn't meet the parameters that they defined. And so I always say, when you look at a job posting, if you meet 80% of the requirements, you should go ahead and apply. And I always tell people that if one of those requirements is an education, a degree, an advanced degree, I would still apply even if you don't have it, especially if you have the commensurate level or number of years of experience that they're looking for. But there are some companies that simply will not proceed with you as a candidate if you don't have a specific degree. But again, I will talk about how to deal with some of that later when we get into our education section of our resume. But it is something that I want you to know. And that's why you get those auto reject notices, is because somehow you have failed to capture their key requirements. And so part of when I talked about doing that SWOT analysis and writing very targeted, focused resumes is slowing down and taking the time to really analyze the company, to analyze what's going on in their world, to think about what are their problems, what are their needs, to really break that job posting down word for word and really evaluating the requirements and ensuring you have showcased that you meet all of those requirements in your resume. It could be as simple as they're looking for 4 years of experience and you left the months off and you only put years on your experience. And so it didn't give you like the right number of months of experience. And you were just came up when they did their calculations as underqualified. It could be something that simple. And so just keep that in mind. You've got to slow down, stop trying to apply to hundreds of jobs every week, even tens of jobs every week. Slow down and take your time with each application. Really dig in, do that SWOT analysis of the company I talked about, read through that job posting, and make sure you are taking the time to showcase that you are qualified for the role. You can't assume that they understand your qualifications. Remember, this is a computer system. It doesn't make assumptions. It needs things in black and white. And so you've got to take the time to do that. Okay? So that's really what an ATS does. It parses that information from your resume and then it reads through your resume and it identifies if you have a keyword match. Are you a keyword match for the job? And so if it were as easy as just making sure you had all the keywords from the job posting in your resume, then everybody would be highly ranked. But it's not that easy. You also have to dig into what's happening in the company. What are they looking for? What are their needs? What is their mission statement? And making sure you've created a resume that is just for that company and just for that job. Again, slow down, take your time, right? And that's how you get that highest percentage keyword match. Now, a lot of recruiters like to say, I read every resume of every applicant. And I think that is a great and noble thing to say, but if they're getting 1,000 applicants, I just can't imagine they're sitting down to read 1,000 resumes. And they're typically, most recruiters are filling more than one position at a time. And so there is a good chance they're only going to look at the people with the highest percentage match. And so we want to make sure that we're taking the time to be highly ranked and make sure we're matching those keywords. Okay. Now, I told you I would discuss with you how to create an ATS compliant resume, right? Some compatible resume. A resume that is going to be able to be parsed effectively and efficiently from what you submit to what goes in the system. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. So as I'm giving you what I call best practices, I'm going to talk to you about why and getting that ATS to read the resume, but also getting the human to read the resume is really important. And I'm going to talk to you about some strategies to make that happen today. Okay. And I'm going to demonstrate some things to you as well with some documents that I have. Okay. So let's talk about this. You know what? We're going to get into ATS compatible resumes, but one of the things I promise you, and you can tell me if this has happened to you in the chat. Has anybody ever asked for an opinion on their resume? Has anybody ever asked for someone to review their resume and give them feedback? And in fact, Career Connectors, one of the sponsors of this presentation, has a monthly meeting, and you can actually go into a breakout room with a professional resume writer who is part of the organization that I'm a former board member of, the Resume Writers and Coaches Association. and one of us will come in and give you a resume review and give you some feedback on your resume. So I see a lot of yeses. Yeah, you've shown it to people. Now, have you ever shown it to multiple people and gotten different opinions on the same thing? Right? So it's like, oh, you need to take that off. Oh, you need to put that back on. It'll make you a little bit crazy because I truly believe that resumes are as subjective as beauty. And everyone has a different opinion and it can make you a little crazy. So I promise you today, as I'm going through and giving you what I like to call my best practices, I will give you my strategic reason for everything. And so the next time you get an opinion on your resume, you get input or feedback on your resume, I want you to ask a really important question. And that question is why? Why do you suggest that? Right? Not in a combative way, but just ask that strategic reason why behind what they're saying. And I can tell you right now that when I talk you through best practices today, I'm going to give you a strategic why for all of it. And if I don't, you call me out on it and I will explain it to you because I just forgot to say it. And so if they can't give you a strategic why behind what they're suggesting, that's just their opinion. And you know what they say about opinions, and everybody has a different one. And we don't want to we don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction to our resume based on opinions. Okay. So it's really important that you ask that strategic why. Why is that? Why do you think I should do that? And so when we get into talking about the things that are incompatible with an ATS, there are 4 really important formatting elements I want you to avoid. The first one is a formal header. Okay? If you put your name, your phone number, your email, any of your contact info into a formal header, the ATS cannot read information in a formal header. So there is a very high likelihood that you will go into their tracking database with no name and no way of getting in touch with you. And I'm going to tell you that even if you are an incredibly attractive and qualified candidate, someone they're like, oh, I really want to talk to that person. If they can't find your contact info, they're not likely to dig through and find it. Okay? It's very challenging. Once you go into their ATS, it's very challenging for them to find you. And they're probably not going to make that effort. And so let me explain what a formal header is. If you have to double click on your name and phone number to edit it, that's a formal header. If you have to hit exit header footer to get out of that section, that's a formal header, and we want to avoid those. So to avoid any questions, I'm going to stop sharing my presentation for a minute, and I'm going to share with you this document. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so this is a Word document with a formal header. Do you see how it's a little bit fuzzed out? You can't, like, it's not bright and brilliant, and I can't just single click in here. In order to get in here to edit my name, I have to double click. And then you really can see it very sharp and clear. And then I can click around in here and change my name, change my phone number, all of that. To exit out of it, I can't just click out of it. I have to go up here and hit close header footer. You see that? Hopefully everybody can see that okay. This is a formal header. And I'm going to tell you right now that almost every Microsoft Word template uses a formal header. Okay? So I'm going to show you in a minute how to avoid using a formal header. So just get rid of it. Click in there and highlight it and delete it and start over. Okay? And I'm going to show you how to do that here in a minute. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense to you. go back to my presentation. And I think I saw a couple of comments come in. So let me just check out your comments really quick. Okay, so first change to the resume has been made. You know what, Jennifer, you are not alone, because people automatically are like, oh, I need to create a resume. Let me open up my Microsoft Word formats, my templates. And so I'm not a fan of templates because they're overly complicated. They use things like formal headers and other things I'm about to tell you about that aren't compatible with the ATS. And so that is great that you're already making that change. I have seen putting your name and contact info into a formal header absolutely stop a job search in its tracks. So really, really important that you're not using a formal header. Okay. Now, Terry asks, what about a PDF? And the thing about a PDF is the PDF is basically you take kind of a photograph of your document, and that's what you save it as. Now, some of the more, more legacy ATSs cannot read PDFs. Some of the newer ones can. And now we have like more like readable PDFs that are being created in today's world. So here's what's really important with using a PDF to apply. It's really important that you read the application and you see if PDF is an acceptable format for you to submit your resume online. And if they offer a PDF and they say you can upload it as a .doc, as a .txt, as a .pdf, then absolutely go ahead and upload that PDF. They're telling you they can read it. But if it's not on their list, they're not able to read it. So it's really important that you not upload in a file that is non-compatible with their system. Okay, so no formal headers. A formal header makes your resume incompatible with the ATS. The other formatting elements that are not always compatible with ATSs are text boxes. So if you insert a text box and you're able to move that text box all over the document, that text box is unreadable by an ATS. Charts and graphs and word art, also unreadable. Okay. Tables. You've probably seen these really cool looking resumes where they have like a blue box on down the left side, and people can put lots of different stuff in that blue box, their name and their highlights and their skills and their education. And then there's another box down the right side that has their work experience in it. Those are tables. That's created with a table. There are many ATSs that cannot read information in tables. And so that beautiful Word document template that you opened up and started typing in is not compatible with applicant tracking software. I wish it weren't true. I wish that we could have all these pretty Canva and Pinterest resumes, but they're just not practical when you're applying online. Use those when you go to a career fair and you hand your piece of paper over to someone. That's when you use those networking resumes that are pretty and fancily formatted. But for applying online, you don't need a lot of fancy. And I'm going to go through formatting with you today, and I'm going to show you how to make your resume attractive to the human eye while still being compatible with the computer. Okay? So no formal headers, no text boxes, no tables, and no columns. Some of the older systems also can't read information in columns. So instead of using columns, I would rather see you use tabs or spacing. And so columns are also an issue out there right now sometimes. So those highly formatted resumes that you see, they're not really working because they're not going into the system effectively, and they're not able to see all of your information. And that could be why you're getting some of these no's, because you're just not meeting the needs because they can't read the information in your resume. Okay. You've probably seen resumes that have like a highlights section where it's like you pull out your greatest hits, your biggest accomplishments, and you put them in the highlight section. And there's nothing wrong with having that section, but I'm going to tell you that an ATS doesn't know where to put that information. And it may not bring it over at all. And it doesn't know what job to assign it to. But also, when the human reads your resume and it sees these highlights, unless you put a year and a company name, again, they don't know, like, how old is this accomplishment? When did they do this? Where did they do this? How long ago did they do this? What company did they do it for? And so while I love having a section that is like a summary or a highlight section, keep your important accomplishments and your really big wins, keep them in the work experience section. That is where they belong, and that is where the ATS knows how to import them into their system. Okay, again, we'll get into this and we'll show lots of samples. I'm going to kind of work you through like a document that a resume we're going to create together today. Okay. All right, so any questions I can answer for you about the ATS? Hopefully I've cleared up some misconceptions about the ATS for you. And we're going to keep talking about it because it is a big reason of strategy of how I'm going to talk to you about writing that resume today. So before we move on, I want to address AI and using artificial intelligence to create your resume. Okay. So let's talk about it. So there's lots of tools out there right now. ChatGPT, Perplexity, there's all kinds of them out there. And one of the things that I'll tell you a little bit about is when AI started working on resumes, the way that they learned is an interesting word, but the way that they gathered their information about writing resumes was by going out and scraping Reddit threads. And so I don't know that I would let Reddit write my resume. And so the thing about what AI knows about writing a resume is we've got to think about where their knowledge came from, right? And so you've heard the term garbage in, garbage out. And so it worries me a little bit about how an AI tool thinks a human resume should read. And almost everybody can tell when a computer, a software application wrote the resume because it just doesn't talk like a human talks. And so my recommendation is absolutely use AI. Absolutely, AI is of value to you. Okay, I want you to utilize the tools that are out there and available at your disposal. But instead of using AI to replace your ability to communicate, use it to supplement you. Use it as a research assistant. AI was really meant not to replace humans, but to help them. And so I love using AI to look things up or to get new ideas like, hey, I'm trying to rewrite this, or I'm trying to shorten this. Can you give me some input on that? And the thing about an AI tool writing your resume is that it will make things up. And so an AI tool knows that a sales resume needs numbers, and so it puts numbers in your resume and it makes them up. And so what I want you to think about is, remember I said the resume is only step one, right? The resume is just one part of the job search process. And if you have a great resume and you're getting interviews, but you're not landing jobs, then your resume is good, but your interviewing needs work, right? And so if you send a resume with numbers on it and you don't have any idea where those numbers came from, or they're not real or valid, and you can't tell the story behind the bullets on your resume, when you get into an interview, you're going to be in trouble. So yes, AI tools are great. There are some really valuable resources out there, but use them for research. don't let them replace your ability to communicate about yourself, right? And I write resumes for a living. I own a resume writing business. And I will tell you right now, you should never let anyone or anything write your resume for you. I don't write resumes for people. I write resumes with people. And those people have to be an active participant in the process because I don't want to write in my words about people. I want to write in their words. I want to write in a way that they will go out and speak about themselves. And so, yeah, Jennifer is absolutely right. When you get familiar with AI output, it's easy to pinpoint when something is written by AI. There are some tells. You are correct, Jennifer. So yes, absolutely very important to think about. Use AI. Absolutely, I'm an advocate for using AI. I use it to gather research, to change, to get ideas on how to write things differently or do things differently, or um, to create outlines for things that I do because I host a podcast as well. Um, but it's really important that we don't let it replace us, and that we don't let anybody come up with information that we would never say about ourselves. Okay. So, Smita asked if they're going to get the slides and recording. That is another reason that we want you to register using that QR code at the beginning, or the link that was in the chat, is that we will be sending you a recording of this so that you'll be able to have that recording of today's event. And so that only the way that we can share that recording with you and the additional supplemental information is if you register. So we won't be sending you the slides, but we will be sending you a recording, and you can go through this information at your leisure down the road. Okay. Okay, so that is AI. So we will definitely be talking about more about how to do this in a way that is compatible with that applicant tracking software, and also with the just making sure that you're working with the tools that you have available to you. So Wendy, if you are listening, would you put the link in the chat one more time to register? So there's some people that just jumped in this. Thank you so much, Wendy. You're awesome. So there you go, Susan. That link is there, so you can register, get checked in, and we can get that information to you. Okay. All right. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of the resume. Okay. Now, you notice I don't say do it exactly this way to write your resume, right? I call it best practices because there is absolutely some things I can tell you, some best practices I can tell you, and I'll give you that strategic why behind it. But there's no one right way that everybody needs to write their resume. And it's probably one of the most frustrating and freeing things about resume writing. Secretly, I don't like a lot of rules, I'll be honest with you. There's a reason I didn't go into the military, is because I don't like rules that don't make sense, right? And so I like to be able to be creative and do things in an innovative way. And that's what we can do with resume writing, is we can make our resume work for us and what we have to offer. Okay. And so that's what I'm going to give you today. And as I said earlier, if I fail to give you my strategic why for what I tell you to do, or what I recommend as a best practice, please feel free to put that question in the chat and let me know if I have not clarified the reason why for all of that. So, okay, so we are now going to just go section by section, and we're going to go one by one and talk you through my recommendations, all the way from what many of you will have as the top of the resume to the bottom. Okay. And so if you have that resume, pull it up on your screen, bring it out with some, your red pen. I prefer to use a pretty color like purple so it doesn't look so mean. But let's start marking that up and making some changes to it. Okay. And I'm also going to demonstrate some documents. As I said, I'll kind of show you some different things that we can do as we go along. Okay. So we're going to start off just at the top of the resume. Now, there's not a lot of absolutes that I'm going to give you today. Like, absolutely, you have to do it like this. But the one I'm going to tell you is that your contact information needs to be at the top of your resume. I want it to be the very first thing that a recruiter sees when they look at your resume. I don't want it down the side. I don't want it across the bottom. I have heard from recruiters time and again that before they even dig in to whether or not this is a viable candidate, they want to know, can they get in touch with this person? And so they don't want to have to read through your resume and then figure out that you've forgotten to put a phone number in. So put it right at the top. Your name and your contact info goes at the very top, and it's never in a formal header. Okay, so you remember I showed you what a formal header looks like on that other document. So I'm going to show you how to create a nice location for your name and contact info. I'm going to show you how to format that in Microsoft Word without inserting a formal header. Okay, so I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So a name, phone number, email goes at the top of the resume. And I want you to use a minimum amount of space. So think of your resume as like beachfront property. And so we don't typically build a tiny little home with a huge yard when we live on the ocean, because the beach is our backyard. And so typically you'll see people kind of maximize that piece of property with a large home, and they take up every inch of it and don't have a big yard typically, because they are on the ocean. So it's very valuable property. I want you to maximize it. So I don't want you to use 5 or 6 lines to give me your contact info. It really shouldn't take more than 2 lines for you to give me your name and how I get a hold of you. Okay. Your exact address is not necessary. Now, I know a lot of you are tuning in from Pinal County. This course is brought to you by Arizona at Work Pinal County, and many of you who are in Pinal County are going to be probably looking to drive into the greater Phoenix area. You're going to brave the I-10 every day. But I will tell you that if you I saw some people that lived in Maricopa. If you put that you live in Maricopa and you're applying for a job in downtown Phoenix, that may be like, people might look at that and say, gosh, that's a long ways to drive. So even then you might say, I'm going to just put the greater Phoenix area on my resume. But you also don't have to put a city and state on your resume if you don't want to. Let's say you want to relocate and you're willing to, like, you're already planning, maybe you're working today in Phoenix, Arizona, but in a month you're going to relocate to Nashville, Tennessee, and you want to start looking for a job there. I would put Nashville, Tennessee on my resume. So then when they see it, they're not going to look at it and go, oh, you live in Phoenix, I'm not going to pay to move you. I'm not going to call you because I don't want to pay the cost of moving you there, right? So if you put Nashville, Tennessee on your resume and they call you for an interview, you can explain, I'm already planning to relocate to Nashville in about 3.5 weeks. I can be available for a phone or a video interview immediately. If you give me a couple of days notice, I can be there in person, right? So again, you can explain that, but we don't want you to get screened out before you even get a call. Okay, so that's why we don't need to put that exact address and how I would massage my city and state based on where I'm applying. I want you to make sure that your email and your voicemail are professional. I want to make sure that, first of all, your email address, right? So some of us have had email addresses for many, many years. I just had one today that I talked to the person who they called themselves a smart, another word for booty in their email address. And I was like, okay, well, we've got to talk about getting a new email address before we put that on your resume. And so I, again, like hotmama66@yahoo.com is not a good idea. No, please not, Jennifer. Please don't tell me that's yours. So I've seen, Pimp Daddy. I saw one once where the person's email address was I love Jack Daniels. And I was like, we have to change that. And she's like, but my boyfriend's name is Jack Daniels and I love him. Well, I appreciate that, but it still probably isn't how you want employers to get in touch with you. So, my recommendation for those of you that are job hunting is have an email address that is just for job hunting. That is, nobody else has access to it. If it gets some spam, it's not going to be a huge deal because unfortunately, spam kind of comes along with job hunting. And so it's just your professional job hunting email, but be sure that you check it regularly, that you're logging into it and looking at what's coming in and checking the junk mail regularly just to make sure. Okay. Also think about what you name your email. So when you set your email up, it's like you give it a name. And I had someone once name theirs all caps, I need a job, and about 15 exclamation marks. And so definitely don't recommend that. So keep it just professional, simple, your name. Jennifer talks about her birth year is an email address, and I would definitely not recommend that. I think that is a way of people, screening you out. So if you use numbers, don't make it your social security number. Don't make it your date, your year of birth or date of birth. Just put a random number in there if you can't use, just your first name and your last name. You can use first name dot middle initial dot last name, or there are all kinds of different variations you can try. And also think about like the AOLs and the Hotmail addresses, again, are going to date you and, open you up to some of that age discrimination, which unfortunately is alive and well. And then, to be advised that your Yahoo email, there's nothing wrong with Yahoo, but anything sent with a link, Yahoo oftentimes sends to junk mail. So just be aware that you want to check your junk mail regularly. So yeah, and you're right, Wendy, that people can go figure out if they have your email, your city, state, your phone number, they can go and dig into it, right? But what we're trying to avoid is smacking them in the face with our age. We know they can figure it out, but we don't want to get screened out because we have like shown our age on our resume. Like, I don't want anybody to know my age, my religion, my political affiliation, my sexual orientation. None of that should come across on my resume. I want my resume to be about, here's how I can add value to an employer. That's what your resume really needs to be about and highlight. Okay. Lastly, we want to create a custom LinkedIn URL. So when you get assigned a LinkedIn URL, it is typically your linkedin.com/in/your name and a bunch of letters and numbers. And that doesn't fit very well onto a resume. And so I'm not going to go through how to do this, but if you Google custom LinkedIn URL, it's very easy. And you can just cut out all of the letters and numbers at the back. So I'll give you mine. I'm going to put it in the chat. So if you want to find me, I am just at linkedin.com/in/Lori Norris. And you follow that link and you'll go right to my LinkedIn, and I'm easy to find. And I can drop that on a resume. I can get rid of the HTTPS on a resume and just go with the www. If you want to use a clickable link in somewhere like Zoom, you need to put the the HTTPS in your link. Okay, so that's just a little insight in there for it. All right, so let's do this. Let me stop sharing this. Let me go to my next share. Let's talk about this. Let's look at how we can, one second here. Okay, so just give me a little thumbs up if you can see this document in the on the screen. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Glenn. Okay, so I'm just going to blow this up so you can see what I'm doing. Come on. Thank you for all of your patience today while I navigate a very tricky situation with my internet connection. So, okay, so here would be an example of my contact information taking up 5 lines. And I don't want it to do that. Like I said, your resume is valuable real estate. So just ignore all this other stuff. We're going to get to that later. So we're just going to focus right here. And you notice it's not a formal header. What in the world did I just do? It's not a formal header. I can click on it one time, not a formal header, okay? But I want to make it look pretty, like the other one with the formal header that I showed you. So what I'm going to do, first of all, and we'll talk about this later, but I always recommend bolding your name. And I always recommend that your name is bigger than everything else on the page. I like to do a little visual interest, and I'll take my first initials, like my main initials, and I'll make them bigger, maybe go 22 points, and I'll make the other ones 18 points. And then I recommend that we put all of this on one line. So I'm just going to get all this moved up. So I personally like to center everything, but I can either center it or I'm going to left justify it. Okay. And then I want to just break this up a little bit. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to go insert, and I'm going to go to a symbol. I can use whatever I want, right? That was a little fat. So let's just do a little smaller one, right? A little circle. So I'm going to even out my spacing. So I've got 2 spaces, my bullet, 2 spaces. So I'm going to do that here. Get my little bullets in there, my little, to separate everything. Okay. Now let's put some color. Maybe I liked the way it looked earlier with the color when I had the formal header. So I'm going to highlight my name, and I'm just going to use this tool right here, which is shading, borders and shading. If I want to go dark, you notice that the dark background turned my font white. I'm going to tell you right now that when ATS's import information, it takes white font or any color of font and turns it into black. So you may have heard that, like, oh, put the job posting in 2-point font white at the bottom of your page, and then all the keywords will be in there. Well, I just told you that's going to turn black, and it's going to show that to the recruiter at the bottom of your resume, and they'll know you were trying to cheat. Okay, so maybe I want to put a border on this, right? So I can also come here, same thing. These are my borders and shading. And I'm going to put some gray in there. Let's just have some fun. I'm going to put a little gray border. I'm going to put it right there at the bottom. And voila. See, I've got a little blue, a little gray. Color is not a problem on a resume. It should be used sparingly. But now I've got what looks like a formal header, but it is not a formal header. It just has the appearance of one. It's all readable and compatible with the ATS, okay? So I'm going to go back, make sure that I didn't miss any comments. Let's see. Okay, excellent. So everybody, that makes sense, hopefully, to everybody. Hopefully you understand what I mean with the difference between a formal header and just a formatted header, right? So the formal header, you cannot edit it without double clicking, and you have to hit exit header footer to get out of it. Okay, that is the difference. And like I said, just about every Microsoft Word template that is out there in Microsoft Word, no matter what version you're using, unfortunately uses formal headers in their resume templates. So let's just avoid them. Okay. There you go. That is your contact info. All right. So hopefully I've given you all the strategic reasons behind what I have recommended here, and it seems like it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing, but I really want you to understand that there is some importance here. We want them to be able to get in touch with us. So it's really important that you put in there exactly how to get in touch with you, and they can read it, and it can be imported into the ATS from your resume. Okay. All right, let's move on. Our next section we're going to talk about is our summary. And our summary is exactly what it sounds like. It is the section at the top of our resume that summarizes why we're qualified for the job. This is where we are going to clarify what we are focusing on. Okay. This is where we're going to tell them the best of the best about us. Think of it as the cliff notes of your resume, right? So hopefully everybody knows what a cliff note is still. So we want to make sure that if they don't read anything else on our resume, if they just read our summary, they would know the highlights of why we're qualified for the role for which we're applying. Okay, that's what your summary is all about. So clarifying our focus, explaining why we're qualified, being very brief and keeping it very targeted and relevant to the employer. Okay. So do you remember the days of objectives? We would have at the very top of our resume, and it would say objective, and it would say something like seeking a challenging position in a company that offers growth opportunities. What kind of job am I looking for? I don't know. I just want a job, and then I want you to promote me when I get that job, right? So that doesn't tell anybody anything. So an objective is definitely not what we want to do in today's job market. Instead of an objective, we're going to use a very targeted summary, and we're going to use the very first line of our summary to showcase what it is we're looking for and how we're qualified. So we're going to write that together today. Now, tell me in the chat, do you even have a summary, or did you just skip right from your contact info into your work experience? And if that's you, I hope to convince you to add a short, brief summary section today. And as I said, it's like an introduction, right? It would be like, I don't know, just walking into someone's house instead of knocking first. I don't want you to be rude. I want you to briefly introduce yourself and tell them the highlights of why you're qualified. Okay. So as I said earlier, this is where we're telling them our focus. So we can do that in a couple of ways. I'll show you a couple of different ways to do this in a minute. And it's going to be very brief. I don't want it to be more than, think like 4 to 6 lines, typewritten lines, or no more than 3 bullet points. Okay. And so, hello, Vasu, welcome back. And so you just can't get enough of my classes, can you? Welcome back to the class. And so I really want you to think about how can you very briefly introduce yourself to that employer. And the important thing that you want to think about here is you don't want your highlights, your summary, your core competencies to take up your entire first page of your resume. We're going to talk later about one page versus 2-page resumes. And we're going to talk about the strategy behind that, but it's really important that I tell you right now that your whole first page should not be summaries and highlights and core competencies. You've got to get to the important stuff, to the meat of the resume, which is your work experience, really. So we've got to make sure we're getting to that in due time. We want to make sure that we keep their attention while they're getting into our resume. What I always like to say is that a good resume, they'll read the entire thing from top to bottom. But what we want is a great resume. And a great resume captures their attention, gets them to read the whole thing, and after they've finished, it gives them a compelling reason to call you. Period. Okay? That's what we want. We want that great resume. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about doing today. And part of that is starting with a really strong summary. So here are some of the questions you're going to answer in your summary. What do you specialize in? Right? What do you do really best? What do you do really best? Luckily I write better than I type, or than I talk, excuse me. What do you do really well? Okay? All right, so that's important. What do you do really well? Tell us what you specialize in, right? So what makes you valuable? What makes you cost effective? How are you going to bring benefits to your future employer? And if you have no experience, do you have certifications, education, licensure that makes you qualified for the job, right? What are the highlights of your top 3 to 5 skills? And what specific software or other skills, security clearances, that you might have that make you qualified? Okay, so let's go look at this. Let's go look at our resume again. Some of you might have already peeked at it. Hold on. Okay, so you should be seeing our resume here that we started working on earlier. So let's go through this. So our summary is going to look like this. Here's 2 samples of what a summary can look like. We have the paragraph style that tells you, like you've got here, I think 6 lines, 6 typewritten lines, and then we have the bullet point style. Okay, so 3 bullet points of why I'm qualified as a senior operations leader. This is called a headline, right? So you can have a headline here, or you can just put the word summary and without a headline. Okay, so what I want to work with you on right now is writing the first sentence of your summary. And you see it on your screen. This is what your summary, the first line of your summary, should contain. What do you do? In other words, what kind of role are you targeting? What do you specialize in? How many years of experience do you have? Or maybe you're a recent graduate, so you could highlight that. And then the scope of what you've done. So here's 2 examples, right? You've got human resources manager with more than 10 years of experience, managing HR programs for global organizations with up to 3,000 employees. Or the bottom one, you've got operations manager with 10 plus years of senior leadership experience, overseeing operational, fiscal, and strategic aspects of organizations with up to 30,000 employees and $25 million budgets. So what do you do? How many years of experience do you have? And the scope of what you've done. So how many employees? What's your budget? Those types of things. When I talk about scope, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So those are the questions I want your very first line of your summary to say. So I'm going to make it so you can see both of these. And I know I just saw a question pop up. So my favorite, I'll tell you right now, I almost always write the paragraph style. Now, does that mean that that's the only one to do? No. Honestly, I would typically use a combination of these 2. I use the headline style instead of writing the word summary most of the time. And then I write a paragraph summary. So it's a little bit of a hybrid is what I typically use. There is not a strategic reason for that other than I find it easier to fit the paragraph style because it takes up less space. And I'm all about saving space when I write a resume. Because it is, again, I find myself oftentimes filling 2 full pages, and I want to optimize the space that I have. Okay. So either one is fine, but take a minute. Let's write it. So I'm going to go up a little bit, and I want to put those questions I want you to answer. Okay. What do you specialize in? How many years of experience do you have? What level of education or certification? And what's the scope of what you've done? Okay. And so let's write that. And if you feel compelled to share it, I would love to see it in the chat. So let me see. I think I saw one come in. So Glenn, hopefully Glenn's okay if I read this. He direct messaged me. So without his approval, I will not read it aloud to everybody. But let me see if it covers all those things. Hold on 1 second here. Oh, he said yes. Okay. Excellent. So Glenn put his whole summary in here, so I won't read the whole thing, but let's just look at the very first line. So what he has is a couple of sentences and then his key skills. Okay. And it doesn't take up a lot of space, and that's what I want you to really think about for this section. Think of it as your overview. It shouldn't take more. When combined with your name and contact info, it shouldn't take more than the top third of your resume. I would prefer it only took up the top quarter of your resume, because some people are going to read this and some people are going to skip right on over it. But what I want is to make something that the ATS knows exactly where to put it when they parse your information from their system into, from your resume into their system. Okay, so Glenn's first sentence says, quality engineer with extensive experience in quality assurance and control in the manufacturing environment. Okay, does that answer all my questions? What do you specialize in? Yes. How many years of experience? No, we have extensive experience. Education or certification, I don't know, you may have like I know there are like certified quality certification, or I'm sorry, quality assurance certifications out there. So I don't know if you have that or not. And then the scope of what you've done. So I say, Glenn, let's fine tune that very first line. I would like to know, is it 10 plus years of experience? Is it what kind of manufacturing? Is it manufacturing across a diverse array of specialties? Is it in a manufacturing environment that produces $26 million in components? Have you inspected up to 3,000 manufacturing technicians? Like, let's get some more detail in there and let's really fine tune that a little bit, okay? And the reason that you don't see Glenn's is that he direct messaged it to me, okay? But I'm just reading to you what he put in there. Okay, so I think I've got one more. Okay, so I've got Jennifer, business professional with 10 years in the solar industry, focusing on process optimization, empathy-driven leadership, and relationship management. Okay, so business professional, Jennifer, is pretty broad, right? So, and this is your start, right? So this is something that I would recommend that you change based on the role you're applying to. So let's just say you're applying to a program manager. I would change that. Maybe it's an operations manager. I would change that. Maybe it's a technical project leader. I would put that in there. So let's really get that and hone that. And so I would say with more than 10 or 10 plus years. And then let's talk about the scope of what you've led, right? So is it project budgets? Is it number of people? Is it 15-person cross-functional project teams? Like, what's the scope of what you've led? Okay. Okay, so I really want to I want you to keep working on this. Um, I think what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. We're just going to take 10 minutes and I will go through. I think I've got a couple more to look at here in my messages that haven't been put in the chat. And so if you're okay if I read them out loud, will you put them will you let me know if you've direct messaged them to me? Just send me a message. Let me know if it's okay if I read yours aloud and give you feedback over the airwaves, if you will. So I'm gonna put up a we're on a break message. So just in case someone joins us, and I'm really excited that my internet connection has held out so far. And but if something happens, you know that I will be back. So do not give up on me. So we're gonna take 10 minutes. We will come back at what time is it? 2:30 Mountain Time. So we'll be back at 2:40 Mountain Time. So I'm gonna stop this share and I'll put up my break message. And we'll be back in 10 minutes and I will look at any other, let me just change this to say 2:40. And I'll look at any other messages that come my way. Okay? All right. Thanks for sticking in there with me. I'm sorry I haven't been able to put video on today, but I will come off of screen share and share my video and look at you face to face when we do get into our questions later today. So hopefully this has been helpful to you so far. Welcome any feedback in the chat. I'll see you guys back here in just about 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with me and giving me an opportunity to get up and stretch my legs. So let's go through some of the messages that I received. Want to make sure I dig into those, at least everybody, read through everybody's. So I've got Sarah Bleen, who has 7 years of experience in developing and managing AI, ML, NLP, and LLM solutions, specializing in managing cross-functional linguistic annotation teams across AWS services, iOS projects, and meta applications. Okay, so the first thing I would say is missing from yours is, what do you specialize in? So that might change based on the job that you're applying to, right? So maybe it's back-end software developer, which is where you start off with, something like that. So start off with what you do with 7 years of experience, and then I would give some scope. So how many people are on your cross-functional project teams? What's the size of those applications or projects that you've managed? So put some scope to it, but otherwise that is a good first sentence. Okay, let's look at my next one. Karen has progressive HR leader who quickly assesses and streamlines HR functions, resulting in cost savings, risk mitigation, and increased employee engagement. So we're missing an opportunity for some really good measurables there, right? So I would start off with that HR leader, bringing X number of years of experience, leading streamlined HR functions for organizations with up to X number of employees, and driving results such as cost savings up to 300,000, risk mitigation and employee engagement increases of up to 22%, something like that, right? So can we put some measurables? I'm always going to ask you for measurables when we're talking about the resume, and I'll explain why here in a bit. Okay?
Thank you.
Vasu, we have a experience in innovative digital product manager with 5 years of expertise in managing consumer-facing products and delivering exceptional digital experiences in the financial service and biotech sector. Okay, and so again, we have more than 5 years of experience. Can we put some measurables to that? Can we put some scope to that? Okay. Valerie is learning and development leader with over 20 years of experience. And again, my recommendation here, Valerie, I don't recommend we go over 15. Again, we're just opening ourselves up to age discrimination, which all discrimination is based in fear. So that fear is, have you priced yourself out of their ability to pay you? Are you keeping up with changing technologies and needs? And are you going to leave them soon? Those are some of the issues that come up with age discrimination. So I would never go more than 15, but that's my personal reasons, and I'm giving you the strategic why. So what's the scope of the organizations you've led learning and development for? How many employees? So those innovative training solutions, maybe they slashed training time. Maybe you increased the productivity. So again, I want you to all start thinking in terms of, how did I add value? What cost savings did that make? Like, what are some of the impact of what I did? Okay. Tanika has a childcare provider with more than 10 years of experience taking care of, and so you've got to broken it up, but I want to take this and condense it a little bit up to 5 children of what ages, right? So and then you go through what you've taught them, that you've maintained the safety. I love that you've really identified like the value that you brought as that childcare provider. Okay. Let's see, we got one from Leslie, the resourceful and knowledgeable community relations representative with 8 years of experience, collaborating with team members. How many? To manage and develop programs and systems. What impact did those systems have? How did they what was the scope of their impact? So again, like starting to think about how did you make an impact? Okay, those are some of the things, like, and you notice there were some pretty common threads, and the input that I gave is scope and impact. Those are the two things that people often leave out of their summary, and they make them very broad and generalized. And the more you hone in on value and you give some scope, you put some numbers, you put some impact in there, the more likely they're going to be to read it. And that's what we really want. We want them to read the whole thing, top to bottom, and we want them to feel compelled to pick up the phone and call us. Okay? All right. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. I don't think I meant, oh, we've got one. Healthcare finance and operations, pre-certifications for outpatient oncology services. So we've got this one. I would put, I see some measurables. We have 3 years of experience. Again, can we put some further measurables to that healthcare finance and operations leadership? What are some impacts that you've made, Vladimir, when you in that healthcare and finance and operations career field? Okay, so oftentimes what we are doing when we're writing our resume is we're offering people the 10,000 foot view. Like, we go very high level, big picture, and you got to get in there and talk to me about specific examples of how you made an impact. That's what employers want to know. How'd you make a difference? How'd you make it better? How'd you make it more efficient? How did you save money? Right? Those are the things that employers want to learn from you, so they can get a sense of what you can do for them. Like, your resume is not about where you've been. Your resume is about where you're going next. And we use where you've been to prove that you're qualified for where you want to go next. Okay? So that's really important as you think about, how can I use my previous work experience to prove that I'm qualified for where I want to go next? Think of your accomplishments, your work experience, as evidence. And that is your evidence of why you're qualified. Okay? All right. So let's move on from the summary. I hope that I've made some changes to your summary. I know I've recommended some numbers, some measurables in there, and I'm going to get into the strategic why behind it. I've talked a little bit about it already, but let's dig into it, and we're going to talk about it with our work experience section. This, this is truly the meat of our resume, our work experience section. This is where we really bring in those proof statements. The proof of our value. And again, using our past experience to demonstrate why we're qualified for where we're going next. So as we think about our work experience section, I want you to remember what I said earlier, that resumes are about the employer's needs. They are your customer. Your employer is your customer in this sales process. Your resume is not about you, the product. It's about how you can help them. So we want to focus on value. Have you thought about what makes you qualified or worth the money they're going to pay you? Have you started really thinking about that? What is going to make you cost effective? How are you going to make them money or save them money? How are you going to return the investment that they're going to make in you, right? Now, tell me in the chat if this part makes you really uncomfortable because you don't like to talk about yourself. As I said earlier, I work with a lot of veterans, a lot of transitioning service members, and they're taught we are a team. We do this together. It's we, not I or me. and they're very comfortable talking about themselves. They don't want to brag. Does anybody else feel that way? Like, I don't want to brag about myself. I don't want anybody to think I am being arrogant or I'm bragging. And I don't want you to brag either, right? If I were to say to you, I am the best resume writer in the world, that's very arrogant. It's bragging, right? And so I'm not. I am not the best resume writer in the world. I don't won an award for it. I haven't been voted that by my peers. Um, I'm a good resume writer, and I'll tell you why. I'm very good at resume writing because I understand strategic marketing. I have a marketing background and I understand how to paint the picture of a candidate's value on the page. And I'm very good at helping candidates kind of like dig around and mine out their value statements and really identify their unique value proposition and put that in a document that gets them interviews. Now, that second statement is based in fact. I can tell you stories, I can give you examples, I can give you references, and I can even give you statistics to back up what I said. The first statement about being the best is not based in fact. I can't prove that, right? That's opinion based. And so there is a very fine line between being arrogant and being confident. Let's explore that. So an arrogant person walks into the room and says, I am the smartest person in this room. They put themselves above or better than everyone else. But a confident person walks into a room and says, I'm one of the smart people here. They just see value in what they bring to the table without putting themselves better than or above anyone else. And so I don't want you to be an arrogant person. If you go into an interview with arrogance and you give them that attitude of like, you can't live without me. Oh, watch how fast they will try, right? So I don't want you to brag either. However, I need you to get comfortable with stating the facts of what make you good at your job, right? And I saw imposter syndrome go by, and what I think imposter syndrome comes from is we're worried too much about what other people think about us. And we all face it at some point in time, whether it's in our job or in our personal lives. But when we realize that I can't control what other people think about me, so I'm just going to focus on what I think about myself. And I'm going to talk about the facts that I know about myself that I can back up with stories and examples. Then again, you're not lying to yourself. So tell the facts, tell the truth of what you're good at. You know, how did you earn your money in your previous role? What made you worth the money that they paid you? And, you know, we can be worth the money that we were paid and still have been let go, laid off, had a boss that didn't like us and get fired. So just even if that has happened to you in your past, that doesn't make you worth less to your next employer. Okay? So I don't want you to brag. I simply want you to figure out what are your true facts that you can back up with stories and accomplishments, references, and examples. Okay? No bragging allowed, right? However, we have to be willing to stand up and say, this is what I do really well. We all know what we do well. We all know what our strong suits are. We all know what our weak points are. And you're here to highlight what those strong suits are and be willing to talk about the stories that you have accomplished in the past and really take credit for them. I think the problem is we all think that we need to be humble and we really can't take full credit, and you can't say that you did everything alone in your career, because you probably were part of a team, and there's nothing wrong with talking about what you accomplished as part of a team, but you also have to be willing to take ownership of what you contributed to that team. How'd you make a difference? What would have happened if you hadn't been there? Okay, so results. Think about what you accomplished and highlight those results as you're talking about your work experience. Okay, so let's start talking about our bullet points on our resume. Let's talk about it. Why do we want bullet points on our resume? And here's the thing that I want to show you. I will show you in a minute how I recommend you lay out your resume. Again, very strategic reason as to why. We want very small paragraphs only on our resume. So our summary, if it's a paragraph, it should only be 3 to 6 lines. Anytime we have paragraphs on our resume, they should be very brief. Studies show us when the human eye skims a document, if it comes to a paragraph, it'll often read the first and last line of that paragraph and skip the middle. Studies show us when someone comes to a bullet point, they're going to read the first 3 to 5 words of each bullet. So we're getting them to engage with more of our document when we write in brief paragraphs and bullet points. And that's why we want to do it that way. Okay. So let's talk about numbers and why are they so important when we write our resume. Numbers on a resume do a couple of things. First of all, when the human eye gets to our resume, when the human eye reads a document with lots of words in it, and if it sees numbers that are sprinkled throughout the document, it'll stop and read what's around the number to give that number scope and give it context, I guess is the word I was looking for. And so by putting some numbers in your resume and kind of sprinkling them throughout the document, you're getting the human eye more engaged in the resume. And we always want to write for the human, right? We have to make it through that computer and make sure we're compatible with the computer, but we're writing for the human. And so again, like Cheryl asked, what about the ATS? How big of a paragraph does the ATS need? And the ATS doesn't care if it's a paragraph or a bullet. The ATS scans documents, the ATS scans the words of the document. But what we're writing for is the human, right? Because we make it through that ATS and we get a human eye to look at our resume. That's why we care about how long our bullets are, how long our paragraphs are, right? And so we want to make sure we're appealing to the human eye as well as that computer, okay? So the ATS is never the end-all be-all, because although it might be the first scan of our resume, we want to make sure we're compatible with the ATS so that it parses our information over effectively. It's not the decision maker, right? The human that we're going to get to read our resume is the decision maker we want to talk to in our resume. So when we write a bullet, we use numbers, percentages, numbers, dollar amounts, measurables. We want measurable outcomes, time saved, percentages increased, dollars saved, costs cut, sales growth, hours saved, efficiency improved, productivity increased, safety incidents reduced, quality assurance increases, right? So those are the measurables that we want in here. And so yes, we want the human eye more engaged in our document, but the other reason we want numbers and measurables in our resume is it shows our scope of impact, that we truly understand the why behind our job. And so we want to make sure that we put a number to our resume whenever possible. Now, I've already kind of challenged you to do that in your summary section, and I'm going to continue challenging to do that with your resume. Now, I have people say, well, I don't really have any measurable accomplishments. I was just, right, fill in the blank. So I want you to take that word just and get it out of your vocabulary. You didn't just do your job. You weren't just a daycare provider, right? So I've loved your, I think it was Tanika, who was the daycare provider, the child care provider, and you really had thought about like how you made an impact on those children's lives, what you taught them, how you protected their safety, how you fed and cared for them. Like that already was evident that you really saw the value of the work that you did just in the summary that you wrote. And I'm really proud of you taking ownership of that, because that's incredibly important. We have to do that. We have to be able to say, I added value in this role. Okay. And so that is incredibly important. So we focus on results and impact instead of scope, instead of duties and responsibilities. So we're going to get rid of job description language that's like responsible for or duties included. And we're really going to think about like, how did we make a difference? Now, has anybody heard of the STAR formula? Let me write it out for you. So this is the STAR formula. It stands for situation, task, action, result, right? So that's the STAR formula. It's the way we've been taught to write bullet points for our resume, all the way back, as far back as I can remember, right? So you tell a little bit about the situation you faced or the task you were assigned. You give some information about the action you took to accomplish the task, and then you highlight the result. But remember I told you earlier that when people skim bullet points, they read the first 3 to 5 words. So we want to capture their attention within those first 3 to 5 words. So I want you to write in the RATS formula. Start with the result. Saved $3 million. Increased sales 22%. Improved quality assurance pass rates 2.8%. Right? Tell me those results right up front. Capture my attention with the measurable impact statement, that result statement right up front. And so let's write results first, and then tell me a little bit about the action, the situation, and the task. Okay? So we want to really make sure we're keeping their attention and we're getting them to read the whole resume. And by putting those results and those impact and those measurables in there, we're getting them to not just read the whole resume, but see the reason why they should call us. Okay? And now the last thing on this screen says, ensure every bullet answers the important question, so what? Let's talk about this, because this is really important, and it's where most people miss when they're writing their resumes. So what? So what impact did you make? So what difference did that make to the organization? So what was the outcome of that? Answer that so what question. Let's talk about it. So we're going to transform our bullets by adding the so what in there, right? So we go from I managed projects to so what did you do with managing projects? Well, I had a 17-person cross-functional project team. I did 7 annual projects. I had budgets of up to $2 million. Now I'm starting to get a little bit more sense of the scope of what you did, but I can push that a little further and say, okay, well, so what? You managed projects. Were you any good at it? So we can now start to say, here's what I can show, how I can show I was good at it. I had a 98% success rate of on-time, in-budget project completion. using proactive planning and efficient resource optimization. Now, to go from managed projects to these two bullets, that's a lot more words. And we don't ever want to add more words just for the sake of adding more words. But what we're doing is we're adding more words to tell a story, to paint a picture of value, and to get keywords into that resume that really helps that employer not only see our value, but also gets us ranked higher for keyword match by the ATS. Okay. Now, Lauren asked a question. If you don't have those metrics, how do you add them? Okay. So I'm going to tell you from here on out, I want you to be your own career manager. And you're going to have a folder in your computer or on your desk, wherever you want it to be. And it's going to be your I'm awesome folder. All right, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to start keeping really good records. And if something really cool happens and you made an impact, write it down, put it in your folder. And from here on out, I want you to keep good records. Like, oh, I'm managing 22 people. Wait, they changed my job. Now I'm managing 27 people. Like, keep those records, write those metrics down. Because number one, not every company is really good about giving you good performance evaluations. But also, sometimes your boss is going to say, hey, why don't you write your own performance evaluation this year? And instead of saying, oh, I really didn't do anything, now you go back to your file, your I'm amazing file, and you've got all kinds of notes, right? I don't know about you, but if I have to think over the last year and think about the great things I did, it's really hard for me to think about that. Instead, I go to a file where I've documented everything and I can just pull those out and write about them. So definitely start keeping good records from here on out. But here you are today. You don't have those metrics from 10 years ago. We might have to estimate those numbers, right? You can call it guesstimating, right? We never want to just guess. We don't want to pull a number out of the air. We don't want to use an AI tool to make a number up. But there's language we can use that shows that we're estimating, like saved an average of X number of dollars a month. Or let me give you an example. Let's just say that I streamlined I was the repair shop manager, and I noticed that my technicians were having to walk from this building we're in to another building to check out a tool, bring that tool back, and use it to complete the repair. And that was slowing us down. And I was like, hey, you know what? If we just move those tools into this location, we would save time. And so I relocated, I laid out the shop floor in a new, more streamlined way, and I saved efficiency. And I would say to you, well, how much? And you say, I don't know, let's figure it out. So my first question to you would be, on average, how long did it take that technician to walk from this building to the other building, check out that tool, and walk it back? We'll just say 10 minutes, okay? And okay, on average, how many times did that technician have to do that in an average day? And you say somewhere in like 2 to 4 times a day. All right, go with an average of 3, okay? So now we've got one technician walking back and forth 3 times a day, 10 minutes each. That one technician saved 30 minutes today. Now, my next question is, how many technicians are in the shop? On average, there's 10. All right, so now average 10 technicians saving 30 minutes a day is 300 minutes a day. I multiply that by 5. Now we're at 1,500 minutes saved a week. I divide that by 60 minutes. And we're up around like 25 hours in saved productivity a week. Maybe I take that 25, I multiply it by 52 weeks. Now we've got a pretty big number, right? So don't expect me to see 25 times, what did I say? I don't know, 25 hours times 52 weeks. It's about 1,250, right? I'm just estimating in my quick brain math that I'm doing here on the fly. I can't touch my cell phone because it's my internet connection, so I can't use my calculator. So here's how we're going to write a bullet. Saved 12, or actually, let me start over. Saved an average of 1,200 plus productivity hours or annual productivity hours after streamlining shop floor layout for greater technician accessibility. Right? I just made that up. But that is how we might have to back our way into a number. We don't have access to those metrics anymore. So I'm going to have to estimate. I'm going to have to average it out. And that's how you do it. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how to do that, Laron. And hopefully I haven't butchered how to say your name. But that just gives you an example of how to get those numbers if you don't have them accessible to you. I would say also, like, pull up your old performance evaluations from old jobs. And if you don't save those, make sure you put those in your I'm Awesome folder in the future. So that you have access to those, okay? Let me just give you another example of how I can go from job description language to so what, okay? You might say to me, well, I just answered phones. Okay, so you answered phones. So what? So what impact did that make? So I could go from answered phones to received and routed an average of 30 hourly calls while answering questions, providing product details, and representing the company with professionalism. That's an impact, right? I could push it a little further and say, well, what impact did that make? What difference did that make? So how about this? Reduced customer hold times by an average of 30 seconds by working efficiently and with a sense of urgency to provide expedited customer service. But what impact did that make on the company? So I could push it a little further. And I could say, I gained in-depth product knowledge to answer customer questions, reducing forwarded calls 25% and freeing floor sales team to engage customers. Do you see that I just answered phones? Do you see the impact that just answering phones can make when you start to take some credit for what you did? When you start to really think about what was the value? Why did they pay you to be there to answer phones? Why was that important? So start thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been there. What would have happened if you hadn't been there to do your job? What impact would that have made? Okay, now let's look at this on the resume that we're building. And I am going to show you my strategy for laying out the work experience section. Okay, so we've got our summary. Let's go down. So I'm going to give you an exact layout of your professional experience, and I'll tell you why I do it this way, okay? So I always want you to have your job title on the left side of the resume, and I want it to be bolded. The reason is twofold. Number one, for the applicant tracking software, that's how it reads your work experience. Job title, company name, location, dates, right? And so your job title should be at that leftmost margin, right? I want you to bold it for the human eye. as the human eye skims down your resume, it's going to pick out those job titles and look for their relevance. So you want to make them bold so they stand out. And it's more important what you did than the company name where you did it. Okay. And then you put your dates. My recommendation is always this way. Number, so month/year to month/year or to present. And the reason I use this, takes up less space. That is the only reason. Remember, valuable real estate. Number dates take up less space. You can spell out your dates, you can abbreviate your dates, but be consistent. Pick a style and stick with it throughout the whole document. Okay? You can use a dash instead of the word to, but just know if I hit enter, that dash gets bigger. It goes from N dash to an M dash, right? And so I want consistency. And so that I don't have to worry about consistency, I use the word to. That's my little strategic reason so that I don't make mistakes, okay? Now, right under that job title, and I recommend this all be on one line to save space. Again, job title, company name, city, state, not necessary, but you can use it. Then your dates. Right under that, I want 3 to 5 line paragraph. Really, it should be like 2 to 3 lines describing your scope of duties in the job using action verbs. And then right below that, I want 5 to 7 bullet points that showcase your accomplishments, value, and contributions. So this 3 to 5 lines with your scope of duties. How many people did you supervise? How many projects did you manage? How many children did you take care of? What were their ages, right? So it's like, that's your scope of duty. So if you had to just give someone an overview of your responsibilities, that's what that brief paragraph is. And then below that, you get 5 to 7 bullets. You don't get 10 bullets. You don't get 15 bullets. You get 5 to 7, okay? And I just don't, people will stop reading after a certain number of bullets. So we don't want to have just a big laundry list of bullet points. Okay, that is your work experience, and that's how I recommend you lay it out. Okay, what questions can I answer for you? Let me see if there's anything that's come up. So how important, Cheryl wants to know how important the scope of duties is. And so I think it's important because it gives me a sense of what your scope of responsibilities were. So I know, like, how many people can you manage? How many projects a year have you managed? What's the dollar amount of those projects? Now, if what you used to do is of a much greater scope than what you want to do next, that might scare people away and they might say you're overqualified. And if you ever hear you're overqualified from someone, what that truly means is, I don't think I can afford you, and I'm afraid that you're going to leave when something better comes along. That's typically what, when someone says overqualified, that's what they mean. And so I think your scope is important simply because it tells the person reading your resume what you're capable of. It doesn't need to be a very long, drawn out explanation. I've seen people do it very briefly, like direct reports, 6, budget amount, 22 million, projects managed per year, 8. Like, you could be very brief about it. It doesn't need to take up a lot of space. And that could be why that person said, hey, get that off of there. But maybe it took up too much room. So brief, I don't really like to go more than 3 lines here, but you can go up to 5 lines. But I want it to be a brief paragraph, okay? And then no more than 5 to 7 bullets. Okay, so Patricia asks, if you've worked at one location and were promoted multiple times within the same company, what would be your recommended layout? So that depends on how much of a promotion you received. And how similar the roles were. Let's say I went from assistant manager to manager. I would put manager, company name, dates, and then right below that, I would put assistant manager, company name, dates, and then I would give my scope of responsibilities as the manager and my bullet points for the entire time frame, my accomplishments. Okay. Now, let's say I went from being in one department to a completely different role in a different department, then those need to be separated. But if it was just a stepped promotion, then I would probably just put them one under the other. Is that similar to your situation, Patricia? Let me know in the comments.
Can I come up and chat?
So the question I also got was, how would you do a resume if you're trying for a new job, one that you have done before? I wonder if you mean have not done before, but if you're going a different direction, then what you've got to do is find the common thread. If you're changing career fields, how can you show commonality of your previous role and how it relates to where you're going next? Now, you said one you have done before in your question that you sent me. So I'm going to assume that you do have that experience. Then what you do is you showcase your previous position. You showcase your recent position and how is that relevant to where you want to go next. Again, you've done it before, you want to do it again. Okay? Hopefully that answered your question. How many resumes should you have if you had more than one job? You really only need one focused, targeted resume that is the foundation for all the resumes you're going to customize to jobs and companies, right? So you need as many targeted resumes as you apply to jobs because you need to customize it each time. But you shouldn't have to completely rewrite the resume every time. If you start with a focus, if you know what your kind of a role you're targeting, it should just be honing that resume. Okay? Rebecca asks, when it comes to the ATS, it will separate the roles, but the description text box will be empty. You're right in that how that ATS parses it, that is perfectly fine because it'll put it into the top job, to the manager role. Okay? Okay, let's see. From front desk associate to front desk manager to AGM to GM. Okay, got it. So, I might put, so for Patricia, she has front desk manager promoted, a front desk associate to front desk manager, then promoted from AGM to GM. I think I would separate AGM and GM together and front desk associate and desk manager together, because those sound like they may be very different responsibilities and roles, but they're similar enough for in that same employer, in that same company you work for. I think it could be two sections showing the progression, right? As another option, what you could do is put general manager and the company name and the full dates of when you were the assistant general manager and the general manager. And in the scope of duties paragraph, you could say promoted from assistant general manager this date. So that's another option for you. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Let's see. I think I know who Rebecca James is. I think you and I met at a 50 Strong event, didn't we? Okay, so Rebecca. Okay, so you're an organizational effectiveness analyst intern, SkillBridge, and hired as a talent development analyst. I think that those can get stacked. Yeah, most people don't even know what a skill bridge is. So you could just put intern. So organizational effectiveness analyst intern. You don't even need to put skill bridge because many people don't know what that is. Um, and then so put that, like you could even use the dates for the entire thing as talent development analyst, and then put started as an intern from this date to this date because I know it was just a brief period, and then hired full time in the state. So that's another way of doing it. Okay. Tell me if that's you, Rebecca. I thought so. Okay. We met and over in Tempe, I think, many years ago. Okay, so let's talk about keywords, Maria. Let's do it. Because I have been talking about them throughout, but your work experience section is exactly where your keywords are going to come into play, right? This is your opportunity to keyword stuff your resume, but by giving them context of when you use those skills, when you gained that experience. And so keywords is all about like what the hiring manager does. The hiring manager and the recruiting authority get together and say these are the skill words that we're looking for, and they don't put them all in the work and the job posting, so that's why you've got to do some research and some digging. But then that keyword match, that high percentage keyword match, is how you make it into the interview process, right? It's like a funnel. You've got 100 candidates, they only want to interview 10. So maybe HR finds the top 20, passes those on to the hiring manager. They want to interview 10. So they start whittling it down like a funnel. And keywords is one of the ways they do that. They give a percentage match of the main keywords and what percentage you matched with them. And the work experience section is your opportunity to not just put keywords in there, but to give examples and tell stories of accomplishments of when you used those keyword skills. And that's really where you're going to do it. Okay. And I did have a question about, will you be able to watch this class again? And the answer is yes. That's why you need to make sure that you registered, and you'll get a link to be able to watch the class down the road. Okay. Or whenever you want to, not down the road, at another time. Okay, let's get back to the presentation, make sure we get finished on time, and let's talk education and training. Again, I have this last, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's always where the education and training section is going to be on your resume. If you maybe have just completed a degree, or maybe you're changing your career path and went out and got some additional education, then you can move your education higher. For me, my education is not really all that relevant to what I do, but I have a degree, so I list it. I just list it last because I feel like it's the least important thing about my qualifications. However, I have a couple of certifications, and those are important, and they showcase my qualifications. So I put them behind my name. I put the acronym of my certifications behind my name on my resume, and I list them in the education and certification section at the bottom. So those are important. Degrees that are partially completed or in progress can absolutely be listed on your resume. We're never going to say we have something that we don't, so we're not going to lie on our resume and say we have a degree if we don't have that degree. But, oops, hold on 1 second here. Hold on. I feel like I'm not sharing my screen. Is that the case? Let's see. Am I still here? Tell me I'm still here. I want to make sure that I'm sharing my screen here. You guys give me a heads up in the chat. I just want to make sure that my internet has not kicked me out of here. Am I there? Give me 1 sec. And am I sharing my screen? Not sharing. Okay, now I'm sharing. All right, excellent. Okay, sorry about that, you guys. So the education and training section. So, you heard me say degrees in progress or partially completed can be listed. So in bold, I'm going to highlight my degree, Bachelor of Science, Project Management. Not bold, next to it, I'm going to put the university, and I'm going to say something like due 2026 or in progress or courses toward degree. I put that in there like that because as the ATS is skimming through the resume, it picks up bachelor's degree. As the human eye is skimming my resume, it says bachelor's degree. But I'm very clearly in black and white telling them I don't have it finished. And I don't ever want to say I have something finished that I don't have finished. Okay? So that's really important. Remember that your education section can be a detriment to you. It can make you look unfocused or overqualified. And so, as an example, I have a friend who he's about to finish his PhD. He's got 5 or 6 master's degrees and 5 or 6 bachelor's degrees and multiple associate's degrees. And often, many of them are in very different things. So if he lists them all, he looks like he has no idea what he wants to do. And that's okay because he's changed his career several times. And that's okay too, because the average adult is going to change careers, not jobs, but careers between 7 and 9 times. But don't let your over education make you look unfocused or overqualified. So if he's applying for roles that only require a bachelor's degree and he's listed a PhD, he might get the you're overqualified, right? So I had someone who she was an executive administrative assistant, and she loved her job, didn't want to do anything but that, and she went out and got an MBA for fun. That was her idea of fun, was getting advanced education. And she put her MBA on her resume and she kept getting that. You're overqualified. And we took her MBA off and she had a job within weeks, literally. So it was just that they thought that someone with an MBA wouldn't want to do that job. And so you have to assess, are you coming across as overqualified? Now, if I only have 1 degree and it's not relevant, I'm still going to list it because I have a degree. But what I'm talking about is if you have multiple degrees or, multiple certifications, like I'm a licensed massage therapist, I'm a certified Pilates instructor, I'm a real estate agent, and I'm a dog groomer, certified dog groomer. And I'm looking for a job as a software engineer. So that would be an example of coming across as like my education is making me look unfocused and like I don't know what I want to do. Okay. So keep that in mind. Your resume is a marketing document. It is not a job application. It's not a legal document. I get to put on there what I want to put on there. Okay. And then your dates of your education, like I graduated from college and back in like a while ago. So so it makes me look older, right? It makes me look older, and I don't necessarily want to convey that. So I don't want the person reading my resume to say like, dude, I wasn't even born when that lady graduated from college. So I don't want to date myself by putting my dates of education. The only exception to that would be if I just graduated, then I might put it in there to explain why I don't have any industry experience yet, because I'm a new graduate. Okay. Rebecca asked, does it matter if you abbreviate, you write out Bachelor of Science or BS? Personally, I think you're more likely to capture the metrics by spelling it out, but there are some that put in there as keywords Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, BS, BA. So now we've got 4 potential keywords. So if I write out Bachelor of Science, put in parentheses BS, and then I put my major, now I've hit 2 of those keywords. So sometimes you could even try doing both of them. Okay. Let's see. I think that's it for questions. All right, so that's your education. So really quick, let me go back to my resume and let me show you all of this brought together. Okay, so here is a resume completed. Oops, hold on. So I've got my name, my contact info. I've got my headline, and I put a little tagline here that tells you a little bit about what I do. I've got my summary, and I've got my work experience, right? So I've got my professional experience, I've got my job title, my company name, my city and state, my dates, I've got my scope of responsibilities, my 3 to 7 measurable accomplishments. I keep going down. There's my jobs. Takes you through the last 10 years. I went 1 extra year, right? I told you you can go up to 15 years. And then I've got my education, Bachelor of Science in Organizational Leadership. I didn't finish, so I put that I have courses toward the degree. Obviously, this isn't my resume. I don't know any of these things. And then my certifications. Oh, we need to update it because we're now in 2025. So again, I can put in progress and then due in the coming year. Okay, so that is an example of a complete resume. And I know your next question is going to be, can I have this? And the only way I can give it to you is just through the video, and that is why we asked you to sign up so we could email you this video. But I do not share this as a template. It is something that I've just created for this class. Okay, so I'm going to go back and we're going to go through one more slide, then we're going to go through a couple things, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Okay, so let's talk formatting. Okay, so I want to go through some formatting best practices. I've talked a lot about content today, and I'm going to tell you right now that the content of your resume is far more important than the way it looks, right? It should be simple, clean, organized, and easy to read, but it's okay to put a little bit of personality into it, okay? So I specifically put formatting last because I don't think it's the most important thing. You know how I feel about templates and Pinterest and Canva templates, and you know that there are things that are not compatible with the ATS, so I want you to keep it simple. Use only formatting elements that are inside of Microsoft Word, but not in a template. No text boxes, no formal headers, no tables, and know that any charts or graphs or word art will not come through the ATS. Okay, so that's really important. It's all about how the resume reads and what you've put into that resume. Okay, also remember you're representing yourself as a candidate on a piece of paper. So consistency and attention to detail is incredibly important. If you tell me you're detail oriented, but your resume is full of inconsistencies and errors and mistakes, I'm going to believe what I see, the evidence in front of me, as opposed to what you've written. So I want consistent font through the whole document. Consistent font size, except your name. It can always be larger. but pick a font size and go with that through the whole document. Consistent margin sizes. And I recommend that your margins are never smaller than 0.5. If you get smaller than 0.5, if someone prints that out and their thumb is covering up information, your margins are too small. So no smaller than 0.5 all the way around. Your font size should be somewhere, for the body of the resume, should be somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 points. Now, there are some fonts in 10-point font that are too small, that are hard for old people like me to read. So maybe you bump it up to 10.5 and it becomes readable. That's okay, but your font, every piece of font on there should be that same size. So if you change one bit, you change the whole thing. Bullet points. I don't care if you use dashes or circles or arrows or squares, but pick one style and stick with it throughout the whole document, okay? Your spacing, again, consistency is important. You want white space on your resume. It shouldn't feel like it's jam-packed with 6-point font from top to bottom. It's overwhelming to the human eye. So you want some white space, you want some spacing, but if you indent your bullets to a certain place, then the rest of the document, you should be consistent. The way you lay it out, again, be consistent. These fonts are really a handful of what I recommend, and there's a reason for that. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Excuse me, I apologize. That one caught me off guard. So the reason I recommend just this handful of fonts is that you can go to any version of Microsoft Word on whether it's a Mac or a PC, whether it's an old version of Word or a new version of Word, and these fonts will consistently be in there. They're widely accepted and everybody's going to have them. So if I've gone out and I've decided I'm going to go download the Disneyland font and I'm going to write my resume in the Disneyland font, and I write my resume, I'm really proud of it, I send it off to somebody else and they open it on their system where they haven't downloaded the Disneyland font, there is no telling what my resume is going to get turned into. It might be Courier, which looks like old typewriter font, and it might be Wingdings, which is just a bunch of symbols. And I can't promise you they're going to take the time to change your resume back to a font that they can read it in. So again, nothing obscure. These are all what we call sans serif fonts, meaning they don't have the little feet on them. It's not as important as it used to be, but it just is cleaner and easier for the human eye to read when you have a sans serif font, which is what those Arial Nova, Calibri, Helvetica, and Verdana are. You can use color sparingly. I showed you a little bit about how to do that using borders and shading. But again, think about like what the color says. Like I opened one up the other day and it was written and it had bright like lemon yellow and red accents, and it was kind of jarring. So you want it to be easy to look at, easy on the eye, and something that is kind of pleasing to the eye. I tend to go with blues and grays and greens, like soft greens and light yellows if I use color. And I just use it sparingly to kind of lead the eye through the document. Design elements might be things like bold and shading. What I bold in a resume is I always bold my name so it stands out at the top and that sets me apart. I bold all my headings, so like professional experience, education and training. I bold job titles to make it easy for the human eye to spot my job title. And I bold degrees. Whether they're finished or not, I bold the degree. So again, that's what jumps off the page. Again, those are all very strategic reasons to lead the eye through the document and to make it easy to read. All right, so let's talk about length, page length. You may have heard you have to get your resume to 1 page, and that's just not true unless you're a pilot. If you're a pilot, that is true. I don't know why, but pilots have to be on 1 page. There is a very specific way you write a pilot resume. And so if you're a pilot, come see me separately and I'll talk to you about your standards. But for the most part, if you need to be on 2 pages, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want you on more than 2 pages unless you are a doctor, a lawyer, or a professor. They write more of a curriculum vitae style, or unless you're applying to the federal government, then everything's out. Federal government resumes are typically 3 to 5 pages long. But again, in the private sector, you can be on 2 pages. Not everybody can fit on 1 page. But if you find yourself on like a page and a little bit, you can probably get to 1 page. If you're going to use 2 pages, I recommend you use 2 full pages. You fill up that back page, and you better make sure that you get to the good stuff, the important work experience, the accomplishments, and the measurables. You better start that on the first page. Don't use your whole first page to have highlights and core competencies and summaries and not even start your work experience until page 2. Because if that happens, they're very likely just going to turn over the first page and go straight to the second page and skip all that stuff. They want proof and evidence. So make sure you start that on page 1. Okay? All right. Let me see if I've got any questions I need to address. So Maria, I don't ever recommend leaving dates of employment off of a resume. Dates of graduation for education, that you can put in your application. That's perfectly fine, right? And yes, if there is a space that you have to put something in an application, you've got to fill it out, okay? But dates on your resume for your education is not necessary, okay? Remember, application and resume, 2 very different things. And if you've ever been frustrated because you submitted an application and then it says, okay, now fill out this application. The reason that they do that and they make you go through and fill that out is because an application is a legal document. If there's something missing from that and you signed that it is true and complete, it's grounds for termination if you are untruthful or leave something out. And a resume is a marketing document. You can pick and choose what you put in there. So it's a very different thing. So my recommendation is have a Word document that has everything you need to fill out an application. And then as you're filling out applications, you can just copy paste from that comprehensive application Word document. And that will give you, expedite that process for you. Okay. So experience with systems like Oracle, Workday, those, Wendy, you can have a tech summary, a technical skills summary, or you can put those in your in your summary section. You could say technical proficiencies include and have a list of those. But if you're like in the IT field and you have 30 things to list, then you probably need a tech summary. But you can also interweave things like Oracle and Workday into your accomplishments, right? Used Oracle systems to set up X, Y, and Z, or entered, employee data into Workday HRIS. So there are ways to actually integrate those keywords into your bullet points, okay? So here I asked about outdated work experience. So previous to that 15-year window that I've given, you can have a section at the bottom of your resume that says additional work experience, and you can list it, and you could say 5 years of experience, but not list the dates, okay? And yes, Sarah, you are right. Put your name on the top of the second page. You are absolutely right. So, okay, let's see. Susan's had a work break for more than a few years while taking care of their mom. I commend you for that. I have that same issue here. So you don't want to say that on your resume, but you said you did do some consulting projects. So yes, you could list it as independent consultant. But there is also nothing wrong with listing caregiving on your resume. And you can just put it as caregiver and the dates with an end date and just say, took time away from career to care for aging family member. Care is no longer needed. Ready to return to work full time in my career field. That's perfectly acceptable to put that as well. Okay. But yes, you can absolutely put yourself as an independent consultant during that time if you don't want to talk about caregiving. That is a perfect way to address that time frame. Okay. All right, so let me go through a couple of things and then we'll open it up to questions. Ooh, which part, Kira? I'm sorry. Let's see. What was your question? Oh, outdated work experience. Okay, so, sorry. You put it at the bottom. You have an additional experience. Oh, the caregiver. Okay, sorry. You put the caregiver and the dates, and you say, took time away from career to provide care to elderly family member. Care is no longer needed, and I'm ready to return to work full time in X career field. Okay, so that would be how I would list caregiving. Don't, everybody has family, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, I took some time to take care of my family member. But it's up to you if it's something you want to address. But I don't want you to be ashamed of it. I do want you to explain why you have a gap in your experience. So, okay? All right, so I'm going to give you this screen. And you know how when someone says, I want you to take a minute to take this survey. This survey will truly take you 30 seconds, I promise. It is not a long survey, but we would appreciate if you would give us some input. And Wendy, if you would pretty please drop that link in the chat so that if someone can't use you are so good, I don't even have to ask. So if someone can't use a QR code, the link is in the chat so that you can take that survey. I would love to hear if you have any input or feedback. How can I make this better for you? Aside from showing my face, which I wasn't able to do today, I can't believe I made it for 3 hours with just my cell phone as a connection. I'm so excited that it worked. So thank you for bearing with me today as we kind of navigated a challenging situation. And so this is your survey link. So please, if you haven't captured the QR code, use the link in the chat. And I just want to talk to you about the fact that this is brought to you by Arizona at Work Pinal County. And Arizona at Work Pinal County is something here in Arizona. So I know many of you are not in Arizona, but if you are here and you live in Pinal County, you can scan that QR code that'll take you to their website. And these are all the different services that they provide. Resumes, interviews, job search, like all kinds of different things that you can get through their system. Is there anybody here from Arizona at Work Pinal County that wants to talk a little bit about your services? Sometimes they are here. So if you are here, drop it in the chat, raise your hand, tell me you're here so that I can, oh, there is Jose, you're here. So Jose is here. If anybody has questions, when we go to our questions time frame, if you want to talk to Jose, you can ask him questions. He's put some information in the chat about their location and what you can find. And if you want to ask him questions, I am sure that he will come off mute and answer your questions for you. He might even show his face, unlike I did today. But as soon as I stop sharing, I'm going to show my face. So, okay, so that is information on Arizona at Work Pinal County. I appreciate them offering this up for those of you that aren't even in Arizona, which is amazing. So, also brought to you by Career Connectors. Career Connectors is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting those people who are out in the market looking for work. They have several different workshops every single month that are also brought to you by Pinal County. You can go to this link, that app.careerconnectors.org/Pinal County, and learn about their. Jessica Pierce, the founder of Career Connectors, hosts a great workshop on networking, about finding job opportunities. There's salary negotiations, there's interviewing classes, there's all kinds of different classes. So you can go there to learn about all the courses that are available. As I said, Career Connectors this is brought to you in part by Career Connectors and Arizona at Work, Pinal County. And Career Connectors, this is their vision, their mission, their values, and they are here to support you. They have monthly networking meetings, and there are always keynote speakers that will educate you about the job search process. There are employers there that are in breakout rooms ready to meet you. There are members of the RWCA that I am a member of that will help you with your resume. There are people there to help you with LinkedIn, to help you with financial coaching and planning, to really make it through this challenging situation. So you can find out about those events by going to careerconnectors.org/event-schedule and find out about those. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn on my video and I'm going to answer questions. So I know we don't have a ton of time, but I'm always willing to stick around if you guys have questions. And so, okay. So I did not know there was not a place for you to give comments. So please feel free to send us comments if there are any questions that we can answer for you. And if there's any way that you can think of that we can improve this resume workshop. I hope you found it helpful. Also, Jose is here from Arizona at Work, Pinal County. If there are any questions that you would like answered. So you can, if you have questions, raise your hand and I will call on you based on how you show up on my screen. So please feel free to raise your hand or unmute, talk to me. There's only 30 of us. So, all right, Karen, I see your hand up. What question can I answer for you?
Okay, there I am. When someone is stuck, and thank you, by the way, this was great.
Hold on. Is anybody else hearing Karen or is it just me?
Can you hear me? Am I frozen?
I can hear you.
I do not hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Do you have your microphone set up?
Yep.
You can hear her, but I can't. Okay, that's
Oh, no. Okay.
Hold on. Let me fix my issue. Give me a sec. How about try now?
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I hear you.
I feel like a commercial. When someone is stuck trying to find the impact or the result in their bullet points, what everybody's you just have to sit down and do it. But what do you recommend when, what is the impact? Do you just sit down and ask yourself questions to get through that block?
So this is the perfect time to bring an AI tool in. Like, if you ever use ChatGPT or Perplexity or something, so I feel like the best way to use AI is to ask it good questions. And the better questions you ask it, the better information it gets. And I talk to AI as though I'm talking to a person. And so I'll be like, that is not a professional way of saying that. Give it to me better, right? And so, so you can even just say, like, give me some ideas of measurable results that I might have made in this kind of a role.
Okay.
And you'd be amazed at what it'll spit back out at you. That's the perfect way to use an AI tool.
It is.
And then another way I would say is like talk to somebody. Like get a friend, maybe somebody that you worked with or like a colleague in the same industry and say like, I'm stuck. Help me figure out some ideas, because I think sometimes getting an outside perspective is a great way to look at things different. You're in it and you're living it. You're like, I'm just doing my job. And maybe even talk to someone that's outside of it and let them ask you questions. So those are two strategies I would use.
Thank you so much. Very, very helpful.
Absolutely. I'm glad I figured out how to hear you. I don't know why I had my microphone setting was off. So, okay, any other questions I can answer for you? Let's see. I did see something come through. Glenn asked me a question. A question about two jobs at the same place. So, test technician 3 for 2 years, 8 months, and quality engineer 2 years, 10 months. I think those are probably pretty different. You're going to be the only one that knows that, Glenn. I think they can be split apart and you show them as two separate jobs. The only time I would say to stack them is if it was like level 1, level 2. If you're doing just a promotion, a step up, I would stack them. But if they're pretty different, so what we're trying to avoid by stacking them is being repetitious. Because if we're saying the same thing, but if you have, let's say you got a promotion and you have different things to talk about as an assistant manager versus a manager, split them apart. But if it was really basically the same job and you would be repetitive, I don't want you to do that. Okay? So hopefully that answers your question, Glenn. Rebecca. My friend Rebecca, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How's a post-military life?
It's good. It's good. I took a break, so I have two questions. One,
Okay.
I know that you spoke on the gap in employment, which I am in right now. So I'm trying to figure out how to capture that. I was trying to follow along with the daycare example. I'm obviously I'm working with a coach, so I can capture, working on skills post-military. I'm trying to kind of capture that. I don't know if I should capture that. I know that there's things that people like about military, and then sometimes you hear don't highlight the military. So I wasn't sure if you could help me with that as far as me kind of taking a break and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I'm working with a coach.
Okay, so I have a couple of approaches for you. First of all, how long is the break?
I'm sorry, I had to close the door.
That's okay.
What was the question?
How long was your break?
It's been about 5 months now. 4 months, 5 months.
Okay, that's nothing. You don't have to explain anything shorter than 6 months.
Okay.
We're in a market that's challenging, right? And so a 6-month gap, really, honestly, post-COVID, 6-month gap is nothing. When you get up to the, more than 6 months, more than a year, then we need to start explaining it. But you really you could do one of two things. Like maybe you've been pursuing some skills. Like if someone asks you, Rebecca, what have you been doing for the last 5 months? What would you say?
Well, I've just been working with a career coach, trying to build my business acumen and translate my skills.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you could even put in there is professional development, and just put in there like pursuing additional skills, training, and knowledge. You could literally put career sabbatical and just say, after a career of service in the military, took a break to define my future career goals. But you could also just not explain it.
Okay, so just have it on the resume, career break, and then
I would call it
list
like
nothing.
a sabbatical, like a personal sabbatical, and just put after years of military service, took a short sabbatical to identify my future career goals. But you don't
Okay.
even have to explain it if it's less than 6 months.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So second question is, with the first sergeant role, I promoted within the first sergeant. So I listed it as first sergeant, but then put AKA HRBP just so it could translate. Would you advise that? Does it?
For military, my recommendation is translate the job title and put that in bold. Human Resources Business Partner in bold. Next to it in parentheses, not bold, you could put First Sergeant.
Okay.
And then United States Air Force.
Okay.
But I would always recommend the translated job title go first.
Okay. And then while I was a first sergeant, I promoted to senior master sergeant. So I wasn't sure if I should put senior HRBP because I went to a bigger unit, but it was essentially the same job. But I went from 450 people oversight to 850.
I would just list that entire time that you
Okay.
were in that first sergeant role. I would list it as one block of time and say you managed human resources and employee relations programs for up to 850 employees. And
Okay.
use that larger number.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else want to unmute and talk to me? So exciting knowing you're here. All right, Rick, you're on.
Hello.
Hello.
So I had a question. You were talking about your history and it should go back 10 years. I've also heard things that it should only go back 3 to 4 years for most recent work history. Could you explain what would be the best history to put and how far you should go back?
Yeah, honestly have never heard the 3 to 4 years. What I believe is if you only go back 3 to 4 years, the assumption that the reader makes is that you only have 3 to 4 years of experience. And so then we're facing reverse ageism. It's like, well, he's young and inexperienced and only has 4 years of experience. And so I would caution against only doing 3 to 4 years because I think you would face the inexperienced issue, the reverse part of ageism. And so a resume has always kind of been a 10-year picture of your work history. If you don't have 10 years, then you would only list 4 years of experience. But if I've got 10 years of experience, I want to own that 10 years and showcase what I've been doing the last 10 years. So that would be my recommendation.
Great. Thank you so much. That answered a lot of my questions.
You are very welcome. Excellent. Maria talked about limiting ageism in a job search, and some of the best ways that you can limit that is, so what we're trying to do is not get screened out before they meet us, right? So I'm just going to tell you, I'm 57 years old, right? And so I don't know that I come across as someone who is 57 years old. I have maintained my technology experience. I've kept my skills current. But if I told you in my resume I'm 57 years old, you'd be like, whoa, that's kind of old. You're going to retire soon. And I would laugh at you and tell you I can't retire. And so I don't want you to know what my age is before I sit down in front of you and I get to showcase my level of energy, my dedication to maintaining technology innovations. Like I want to avoid someone knowing my age before I get to the interview. And so what we're trying to do is not let them know our age by looking at us on a piece of paper and making assumptions or judgments. So we can avoid ageism by not going back very far, further than 10 to 15 years on our resume, not listing our dates of education and saying I graduated from college in 1990. And so we're really thinking about how we can avoid telegraphing that. Like I said, the AOL and the Hotmail email addresses or some other ways. So hopefully that helps you, Maria, really get a sense of how to avoid that and why we want to avoid it so that we don't face that discrimination before we get a chance to overcome those biases when we meet them in person.
Well, Lori, the job that I have done for the longest period of my life has been in the last 22 years, the same job. But I've gotten like a promotion within the job. It's kind of like I have two different roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that worries me because it might show I've never progressed or I don't know. Plus, I want to get out of sales. I even want to transition out of it. So it's very difficult.
How long ago did you get promoted?
Let's say 8 years ago.
Okay. So what I might do is I would highlight the last 8 years of your position, and then
Okay.
I might have like an earlier career experience, and I might say, like let's say now you're a sales manager. Back then you were a sales representative, and I might
Mm-hmm.
say sales representative 5+ years of experience. Now we've met
Okay.
that 10-year requirement, but we haven't gone back 22 years.
Okay.
So that's one way of strategically tackling that issue. Now,
Okay.
if you want to transition to a different career field, then you've got to think about like where do you want to go and what have you done in the last 10 years that's relevant to where you want to go next. And that's what you highlight on your resume. Okay?
Okay. Thank you so much, Lori.
You're very welcome. Thanks for unmuting and clarifying that for me. Is it Dolce?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Great. So when you come, I'm in the same age range as you are. So my question has to do with LinkedIn. Clearly, everything in LinkedIn is very public. They can see everything I've done for the past many years. And how do I deal with the 10 to 15 years? In my case, I would definitely want to highlight my last 15 years of a longer career. But then how do I align it with LinkedIn? Do I delete? Do I, just leave it at the 15-year mark, etc.?
Yeah, so just like you get to pick what you put on your resume, you get to do the same with your LinkedIn profile. If I don't want to, don't we look beautiful for that age range? Come on now. So if I don't want to go back further than 15 years, then
Okay,
I can just delete that earlier career experience. Now,
in
I'll tell you,
LinkedIn.
if you go to my LinkedIn profile, I went all the way back because I don't care. I'm not looking for a job. I want to show you kind of like how my skills and knowledge has developed.
Okay.
But if I were out looking for a job, then I would change that. I would probably take down those earlier roles and I would just highlight the last 10 to 15 years. And again, you can have like earlier career experience even on LinkedIn. You
Okay.
can highlight it in your about section so you can talk about your earlier career, but just not list the dates. So when you put a work experience section in LinkedIn, it requires dates. So then maybe you just highlight it in your about section.
Okay. I had not considered doing that at all.
Yeah. So it's
Instead,
another way
I
of doing
just
it.
take it out. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Glenn, you have a question?
Yes, I think I understood all of that. I'm in the same age range, but I have my picture. I'm older than you. I have my picture on LinkedIn. It's a professional picture um from career connectors that they do
Okay.
for me. I'm looking at the
Yeah.
wrong screen. Um, and so, do I take all that? And I also have all of my experience clear back, maybe even to high school. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that. So I should probably just do the last 10 years because it's
Yeah,
so
maybe
obvious.
15. Like I don't
Okay.
have a problem with you going back a little further on LinkedIn. Like, we had Rebecca on who was retired from the military, and I typically don't go back an entire 20-year military career either, but I might list 15 years.
Okay.
And so I think you can take off some of that earlier. You said you go all the way back to high school, and that's definitely not necessary. Like what you did, 25 years ago in your career.
It
Like,
doesn't, well, it's
what
more than
I did,
25 now.
yeah, it's not really relevant anymore, to be honest with
Okay.
you. All it
Okay.
does really is set the foundation of your knowledge, and I think there's only so much value that it adds. Most companies aren't looking for employees with 25 years of experience. That's not
Okay.
typically their requirement. So I think at some point we have to release that experience. Like I'm really proud of what I used to do, but that was like a whole nother life.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody needs to know about it. So
Okay, thank you. And I really appreciate the lecture today. Thank you.
absolutely. I hope it was helpful. Like I said, thanks for navigating through all the issues that we had. I'm so surprised that we weren't anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I don't see anybody else's hand raised. So I appreciate you staying.